Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. Chicago, Illinois, September 17th, 2023, 8:45 p.m. 11-year-old Trinity Washington lived in the North Lawndale area of town. She was walking her dog, a 3-month-old Yorkie, that evening. One of Trinity's Hispanic neighbors was having a Mexican Independence Day party. This neighbor, along with her sister, decided to observe the occasion by engaging in a violent act of anti-black racism against an 11-year-old child. So when these two women saw this black 11-year-old girl walking her dog, they began hurling racial slurs at the child. One of them stepped on the animal. Then they both attacked this child. Quote, "I looked up and a bottle was being thrown to my face. I dropped down because I felt something hard. She, talking about one of the assailants, punched me in my nose. When she punched me, I almost blacked out and I fell again." Now you had these two adult women who were committing a violent assault on an 11-year-old child. But it didn't stop there. Trinity Washington's mother said that a man related to the two assailants pulled a gun on Trinity's mother, threatening her at gunpoint. Little Trinity had to be hospitalized for her injuries at Lurie Children's Hospital. This child suffered a broken nose and permanent damage to her eye. These creeps, supposed adults, attacked an 11-year-old child so violently she required plastic surgery afterwards.
All I wanted to do was be with my family, not have to go through surgery to surgery to surgery.
These pieces of dirt did this to a child, an 11-year-old girl. And none of us is dumb enough to think that it's some coincidence that this happened during some Latin holiday. The lead perpetrator in this race attack would be identified as 35-year-old Alexis Davila. And as for this racist neighbor's boyfriend who pulled a gun on Trinity's mother,
police initially arrested him the day of the incident and released him the next day.
Now this all happened back in 2023, and even though this violent attack on an 11-year-old child made headlines, there was no attempt to arrest the perpetrators. The authorities knew who did it, but they refused to do anything. Rallies were held along with protests, but neither the police nor Kim Foxx, the state's attorney, made a move. In fact, the authorities didn't even bother to make an arrest until 8 months later in May of 2024. This degenerate and its accomplices attacked and maimed a child, and these anti-black police and prosecutors allowed this animal to remain on the loose for several months afterwards. Davila was eventually charged with aggravated battery to a child younger than 13, causing great bodily harm. The male who pulled a gun on Trinity's mother was charged with aggravated assault and use of a deadly weapon. Even though the attack was clearly racial, the Chicago authorities refused to charge this piece of trash with a hate crime. This is why people demand that the police be defunded and that prosecutors be made to answer to the public personally. This is why you had so many black Chicago residents who were up in arms about the city eagerly welcoming in thousands of individuals who come from these same anti-black racist cultures, where they routinely engage in open violence. This is culture that we're seeing here. A violent anti-black culture that we've been calling out for decades in this country. And what we see are individuals who are bringing that exact same violence here because they know that just like in their home country, the so-called authorities in the U.S. will also protect this exact same kind of criminality. Now, just for the record, the family of Trinity Washington had called non-stop for the charges to be upgraded. They disagree with Kim Foxx, who was the prosecutor in Cook County at the time, giving these lowball charges, and the fact that Kim Foxx took so long to even file the charges. Kim Foxx, you'll recall, was thinking to herself that she was going to prosecute as many high-profile black men as possible, and that somehow this was going to be her ladder to higher office. At least that's what she thought. But, of course, when it comes to white supremacy, when they're done with their tools, they break their tools. 4 months ago, the Illinois Attorney Registration and Disciplinary Commission suspended Kim Foxx's law license, saying that she failed to complete her continuing legal education requirements. What that means is, because the law is constantly being quote-unquote updated and such, attorneys have to prove, in order to keep their bar license, that they're staying up to date on the latest legal developments. Apparently, Kim Foxx wasn't doing that. And rather than go ahead and get herself current, she instead decided that she just would choose not to run for re-election. And that's how a white woman named Eileen O'Neill Burke became Cook County prosecutor on a platform of being tough on crime. But of course, we all know what that really means is tough against black people who are accused of anything and hands off with everyone else, which is exactly what this Burke woman did. By the way, did I mention that this O'Neill Burke woman is also a Democrat? just like Kim Fox. We'll continue with the moment of truth in just a moment, but first, a word from the official sponsor of Black Empowerment, Power Tools. There's no telling when something's going to come up, so make sure you carry your power tools at all times. You never know when you're going to need to bring the hammer down, or when you'll have some trash that needs to be blown away, or some obstacle that requires cutting down. Don't get caught empty-handed. Keep your hammer close by. Keep that leaf blower at the ready, and always carry your steel. Power Tools. Because no matter what your day job or side hustle may be, there's no excuse for not being ready to put in some work. The policy of protecting anti-Black hate crimes runs across multiple administrations. This is state policy. Now, this crime happened in 2023. They didn't bring charges until the middle of 2024. And this animal was only sentenced this year, but it wasn't a sentence at all, because Eileen O'Neill Burke dragged her feet on this case. And it was only to buy time in the hopes that this would fade from the headlines. The tough-on-crime prosecutor gave this violent animal a sweetheart plea deal in which Davila pleaded to aggravated battery in exchange for all the other charges being dropped. The attacker was sentenced to mere probation. That's it. No prison time at all. This piece of filth maimed an 11-year-old child. There was no question she did it. This wasn't a case that required a plea deal at all. Had the prosecutors merely done their jobs and gone to trial, there would have been a conviction, which is the reason the authorities dragged their feet and went out of their way to offer a plea deal when they knew they didn't have to. You violently assault a Black child, maim that child, and these racist prosecutors bend over backwards to engineer an outcome that had no prison time. For something like this animal and its accomplices should be in prison at least for 20 years. Trinity Washington's family is furious, of course, because they recognize this as the prosecutors giving a wink and a nod to an obvious hate crime against a Black child, and that's the entire point, to encourage violence against Black children. They refused to pursue charges because they wanted to show their contempt for the Black community, and they gave lowball charges for the same purpose. The perpetrators of these anti-Black hate crimes know that the authorities are going to protect them, and that's what emboldens them to commit these crimes. This incident, like all the others, illustrates why Black Americans absolutely require an anti-Black hate crime law. One that must include provisions to enable civil penalties against prosecutors who offer plea deals when it's manifestly obvious that they should go to trial instead. Hold them accountable for the part that they play in encouraging and protecting the perpetrators of anti-Black hate crimes. The so-called authorities didn't see this crime as a crime at all. They saw it as an opportunity to send a racial message to the Black residents of Chicago that the authorities are openly encouraging these violent crimes against Black children. As a result, the Black community in Chicago and across the country must be on watch and on code to protect Black children and to make sure that no threats are allowed against the community at all. Black people are under no obligation to sit on their hands while their children or themselves are brutalized. Anti-Black racists are, by their very nature, cowards. That's the reason why you had at least 2 alleged adults who felt that they could jump on an 11-year-old child. They felt they had to jump on this child because they couldn't do so alone. The community is outraged and protesting. That's fine. But at some point, they have to get realistic about the fact that these crimes are not happening in spite of the authorities. It's happening because of them. And as a result, personal protection is a must and an obligation that must be taken dead seriously. These anti-Black racists are constantly looking for soft targets. That's the reason why they deliberately target Black children. So it's up to the community to demonstrate that we recognize that anti-Black racism is a group sport, but so is Black empowerment, and that this community is not going to sit on its hands or beg anyone's permission to protect itself, and certainly not ask anyone's permission to protect Black children. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Eric Bailey, Cyberdyne100, Alexandria Victor, Charles Hairston, and Nita Boswell. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.